Welcome back to The Deep Dive, the show where we take the most complex source material and really extract the essential knowledge you need, giving you that intellectual shortcut to what truly matters.
And today, we are really digging into the world of Stoicism. It's one of the most enduring philosophies from antiquity, for sure.
Definitely.
But specifically, we're trying to find the place of women within this whole tradition. Where do they fit in?
That's right. And our mission today, it isn't just about, listing famous names, though obviously we have to acknowledge the incredible resilience shown by women like Portia, Catonisca's daughter, or the Arius, both mother and daughter.
Absolutely incredible stories there.
Yeah, they really exemplified profound courage, integrity, all facing just immense political danger in Rome. But we want to look past just the anecdotes, right? We want to get to the underlying philosophical DNA.
And I think it's essential right up front to acknowledge the bias. I mean, it's just inherent in the historical record we have. The voices that survived through the centuries, you know who they are. Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius. They were almost exclusively male.
Right.
Often writing for other men, male students, political peers. So actually finding detailed philosophical biographies of specific women living a Stoic life, it's challenging.
Yeah.
Because the documentation, it just isn't there in the same way, not in the same volume.
Okay, so let's unpack that challenge then. If we can't easily find, comprehensive biographies, where do we look?
Well, we look for the foundational principle.
Oh. Okay.
And actually, within the sources we do have, we find something, I think, far more powerful than just a simple biography.
Which is?
An explicit ancient demand for absolute equality in philosophical training.
Wow, okay. Equality in training.
Yeah, and this demand, it makes the Stoic life fundamentally gender neutral, right at its deepest core.
So it's baked in from the start.
Precisely. We're talking about the idea that virtue itself is a universal human calling. And the main source for this really quite radical, equitable argument is Musonius Rufus.
Musonius Rufus,
Right.
like Epictetus' teacher.
Exactly. A major figure in Roman Stoicism, 1st century CE. And he laid the groundwork, really, for why virtue isn't, and frankly cannot be, restricted by gender. He sets the stage for the whole tradition on this point.
Okay, so Musonius is our starting point for this equality argument. It really is remarkable, isn't it? Thinking about him teaching in the 1st century. I mean, Roman society back then was incredibly restrictive for women.
Oh, absolutely. Property rights, political life, access to higher education, severely limited.
And yet here he comes, using what sounds like pure, cold, Stoic logic to just challenge the very basis of that social order.
He does. He starts his argument basically by throwing down a gauntlet. He poses this foundational question that just demands an answer. He asks point blank, why does learning these things befit a man more than a woman?
You can't really argue with that, can you? It's a logical trap.
It really is the ultimate philosophical trap. If the whole goal of human existence is eudaimonia flourishing, right, through reason and virtue, and if women are rational human beings, which, seems self-evident,
You'd hope so.
then the conclusion is just inescapable. Musonius argues, look, if it's appropriate for women to be just, to be temperate, resilient, all qualities you'd absolutely need for managing a household or family life properly.
Right, core Roman values even then.
Exactly. Then it's absolutely necessary for both men and women to have learned the same most supreme and important things that lead to those virtues in the first place.
Okay, but I can see someone pushing back there. They might say, well, hold on. Those supreme and important things, maybe women already learn the important things for their role, like, managing weaving or supervising the household staff. Musonius must have anticipated that.
Oh, he's sharp. He absolutely anticipates it. He draws this crucial distinction between, let's call it specialized craft knowledge and fundamental moral education.
Okay.
He points out, look, if a man knows more about warfare or maybe farming than a woman does, or if a woman knows more about weaving or managing household supplies than a man, that just shows differences in specialized training, stuff required by the different social roles they happen to have.
Right, job skills, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those differences, he says, have absolutely zero bearing on the education needed for the most important stuff. How to live a good life. How to be a good human being.
So he's basically saying, look, specialization is one thing, fine, different jobs, different skills, but the core operating system, the rational soul, that's universal.
Precisely.
It doesn't matter if your sphere is governing a whole province or just governing your own household. The underlying principles you need, justice, temperance, courage, they're identical.
Identical.
Yeah.
And therefore, They must be taught identically.
Which means
It means men and women must be taught the exact same principles concerning life's most important matters. Full stop. Because if virtue is the sole good,
which is central to Stoicism.
absolutely central, the only reliable source of happiness, freedom, serenity, as Epictetus hammers home again and again. Well, if that's true, then denying philosophical training to any rational being capable of achieving virtue, that's not just illogical, it's morally unjust.
It goes against nature itself, in their view.
It violates the core Stoic principle. Act in accordance with nature, and human nature is rational.
Okay, but here's where, for me, it gets even more radical, because he doesn't just stop at demanding equal education. He completely redefines what that education is. He strips away the whole academic, maybe elitist veneer of philosophy.
Yes, this is so important.
He clarifies, doesn't he, that the goal isn't to cultivate like brilliance in arguments or some kind of excessive cleverness. He actually rejects that for men too.
He does. He's fighting against the idea that philosophy is just some intellectual hobby for the wealthy or the leisured class.
Which makes it accessible.
Exactly. This is crucial for understanding why Stoicism could spread across different social classes, and critically for our discussion, to both genders. Musonius isn't trying to churn out female logicians or public speakers.
Right.
He insists that women and men must develop good character and behave nobly. That's the aim.
And then he delivers the killer line.
He does. He states it so plainly. Philosophy is nothing but the practice of noble behavior.
Wow.
Just think about that definition. It completely dismantles all the usual barriers, social status, prior education, even gender. Philosophy suddenly becomes, well, it becomes a job description for being a decent human being.
So if philosophy is just noble behavior, practical ethics, and action, the conclusion is just, it's unavoidable, isn't it?
Absolutely unavoidable. Just as no man would be properly educated without philosophy, so no woman would be either.
It's not just a suggestion like, oh, this might be nice. It's a mandate.
It's a categorical mandate, and it's based entirely on the universal requirement for all rational humans to try and live well.
It really is a profound moment in ancient thinking. You have to keep reminding yourself, this is the 1st century CE.
It is, and this wasn't just abstract theory for him. Musonius was demanding that Roman society actually commit resources, commit respect to training all rational beings, men and women, in moral excellence.
The logic is, if a person has the capacity for justice, you must educate them in how to achieve it.
Exactly. And this, I think, helps us understand why women like Portia or the Arius are remembered, even if we don't have their philosophical treatises.
Right.
They embodied the result of that kind of education. Whether they got it formally from a teacher or informally through family and lived experience, they showed the noble behavior in action.
Okay, so we have Musonius's powerful mandate. Philosophy is the practice of noble behavior, and it's necessary for everyone, men and women alike. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. How does that mandate actually play out? How is it fulfilled in practice? We need to look at the core tenets, the fundamental principles that Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius all upheld. The stuff that applies universally, regardless of your gender or your social standing or anything external.
And the absolute bedrock, the primary tenet of all Stoic practice, has to be the priority of the internal good.
Yeah.
It's often summed up in the dichotomy of control.
Control what you can control, accept what you can't.
Basically, yes. Stoicism teaches very clearly that the sole reliable source of human well-being, of happiness, is excellence of character, virtue.
Justice, temperance, courage, wisdom, the big 4.
Those are the ones. And this virtue, this internal state, is what produces genuine happiness, serenity, freedom from suffering.
Yep.
Crucially, it's the only thing that truly belongs to us. Absolutely.
And the flip side of that coin is?
Everything else. Anything external is explicitly not in your power. It's always subject to hindrance, to interference from others, from fortune, from the world.
And that's a huge list, isn't it? Health, wealth, property, reputation, social status, even your own body.
Even the body itself. And if you think about women in history, particularly in ancient Rome, whose external power, whose status, whose property was so often completely dictated by male relatives, fathers, husbands.
Yeah, very little autonomy there.
Very little external autonomy. But this principle of the internal good becomes the ultimate equalizer. Their external circumstances might have been incredibly constrained, maybe even oppressive, but their character, their inner state, that was still potentially within their control.
That capacity for virtue wasn't determined by their sex or social standing.
Exactly. And Epictetus, who, remember, studied with Musonius,
Right.
he provides this really stark, kind of brutal illustration of this absolute internal autonomy. He asks you to imagine how annoyed, how outraged you'd be if someone just grabbed your physical body and handed it over to some random passerby to abuse.
You'd be furious,
Yeah.
violated.
Of course. Yet Epictetus says we constantly hand over our minds, our rational faculty, our ability to judge and assent. We hand that over to anyone who happens to insult us or disagree with us or cause us some kind of distress. We let them dictate our emotional state.
Ouch. That hits home.
It's meant to. True autonomy, he insists, rests solely within the rational part of the mind, the hegemonikon. And that mind, whether it belongs to a man or a woman, has the exact same potential, the same capacity for self-mastery.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second here. If Musonius' argument was so logical, so powerful, so, well, radical that women should be equally trained in this philosophy, why don't we see more evidence of it? Why didn't it produce, a flood of female philosophical writers or famous women teachers in the Roman world? Doesn't the lack of that kind of output suggest maybe the mandate was just a nice idea, a lofty ideal that couldn't actually overcome the harsh social realities of Rome?
That's a really important question, and it gets asked a lot. The Stoic answer, based on the sources, is, I think, quite nuanced. It comes back to the goal of Stoicism. The ultimate aim wasn't external output. It wasn't about writing books or achieving public fame or leading a school. Those things are external.
They're indifferents.
Precisely. Preferred indifference, perhaps, but still indifferent to genuine happiness. The philosophy worked by producing an internal state, that unimpeded and undistressed mind that Epictetus talks about.
Ah, so the measure of success isn't public achievement.
Not primarily.
Yeah.
So while Roman women were, yes, largely excluded from publishing or teaching publicly or holding political office because of those societal constraints,
Right.
the philosophy still provided the tools, the means to live a well-ordered, rational, virtuous life within the constraints they faced. Often that meant within the sphere of the household, which was considered their domain of duty.
So the success of Musonius' mandate isn't measured by the number of books women wrote, but by the quality of their character and the lives they lived.
Exactly. It's measured by their resilience, their justice, their temperance within their given roles. Think of the Arius, again, facing down emperors, choosing death over dishonor. That's the philosophy in action, even without a treatise attached.
That completely reframes the purpose, doesn't it? It's not about external validation. It's about building that internal fortification.
Yes, and a key part of building that fortification is rejecting our unhealthy attachment to material things, to external advantages. Seneca talks about this constantly.
Yeah, he really hammers the point about wealth.
He does. He points out how foolish it is to think that happiness is somehow tied to how much money you have. He says something like, people mistakenly think it is the amount of money and not the state of mind that matters.
Which he calls madness.
Utter madness, and Musonius agrees completely. He observed, just by looking around him, that having lots of wealth simply doesn't stop people from feeling sorrow or grief. He points to plenty of rich men who are miserable, sad, wretched, despite having enormous fortunes.
So wealth doesn't solve inner problems.
It's an indictment, really, of the assumption that external circumstances can ever satisfy an internal need or fix an internal deficiency. Epictetus takes it even further, doesn't he?
He does. He says something really provocative, like, not needing wealth is more valuable than wealth itself is.
Exactly. And even more starkly, he suggests it's better to die of hunger with distress and fear gone than to live upset in the midst of plenty.
Wow. That's intense.
It is intense. But these are fundamentally moral prescriptions. They demand strength of character, detachment from externals. And that demand is completely independent of your social status, your wealth, or your gender. It applies equally to the emperor and the exile.
Which brings us neatly to Marcus Aurelius, the emperor himself, the guy who seemingly had all the external power and wealth imaginable.
Right. And yet his meditations are almost entirely focused on the internal mechanism of self-governance. He uses that incredibly powerful metaphor you mentioned earlier, the inner citadel.
The inner citadel. Tell us more about that.
It's his term for the rational commanding part of the soul, the hegemonikon. He describes it almost as a divinity within him.
A spark of the divine reason that governs the cosmos.
Yeah, precisely. And it's this inner fortress, this citadel, that allows a person, anyone, to remain, as he puts it, undefiled by pleasure, invincible by pain, inaccessible to reproach.
So building the citadel is the work of philosophy.
It is. It means constantly working to raise your thinking part, your reason, superior to all the pleasant or painful commotion of the body and the external world, superior to chasing fame, superior even to the fear of death.
For someone like Marcus with immense political power, you can see how that protects against corruption, arrogance, tyranny.
Absolutely, but think about it from the other end of the social scale. For someone with very limited external agency, maybe a non-elite Roman woman, or an enslaved person like Epictetus originally was,
Yeah.
that same inner citadel serves as a crucial psychological sanctuary. It's a refuge against the storms of, say, domestic abuse or societal disrespect or political turmoil that you can't control externally.
So it's a universal battle.
It's a universal battle against the passions, against faulty judgments, and it's available to any rational being, regardless of their specific social role or circumstances.
So whether you're the emperor fighting on the Danube frontier,
Or a philosopher like Musonius teaching students in Rome,
or a woman like Fania managing exile with dignity and caring for others,
the internal requirement is the same. Elevate the mind, defend the citadel. The philosophy doesn't demand a specific job title. It demands a specific commitment to mastering your inner world.
Okay, so we've established this universal mandate from Musonius, centered on internal control, and that the core principles support this universality. Now we need to look at the practical application. How did the sources say this knowledge should be applied, the actual way of life?
Right, because Stoicism isn't just theory, it's practice. And these practices, again, were seen as applicable to everyone in ancient society, man or woman.
And the first big practical area essential for resilience seems to be managing our judgments, right? What the texts call the discipline of assent.
Absolutely critical. Seneca is really uncompromising on this. He states that anxiety, fear, psychological suffering, they don't actually arise from the external events themselves.
But from our reaction to them.
Exactly. From our bad judgments, faulty opinions, or a misuse of the imagination, as he puts it. The distress is generated internally by how we interpret the outside world.
So the problem isn't the event, it's the story we tell ourselves about the event.
Precisely. And the key Stoic practice to combat this is a kind of ancient cognitive therapy. It's basically critical self-analysis. Today we might call it Socratic questioning, or challenging our beliefs.
How does that work in practice?
Well, the idea is we often agree with impressions or opinions, especially scary ones, far too quickly, without really testing them.
We jump to conclusions.
We jump to the worst conclusions. So imagine someone in ancient Rome, maybe a woman whose husband is involved in some risky political maneuver. She might have the fear, oh no, if he loses this power struggle, our family's reputation will be ruined, we'll lose everything, we'll face exile or even starvation.
A realistic fear in that context.
A very realistic possibility. But the Stoic response is to take that catastrophic thought and rigorously challenge every part of it. Is our reputation truly ruined by external opinion? Or is reputation itself an external indifferent?
Okay.
Is ruin an external state or an internal one? Is starvation guaranteed? Or is it just one possible outcome among others? Can I actually control the outcome of my husband's political battle? Almost certainly not.
But I can control my response.
Exactly. Can I control my judgments, my choices, my actions in the face of whatever happens? Yes. By rationally dismantling the faulty beliefs, the assumptions embedded in that initial catastrophic judgment, you essentially cure the anxiety at its root.
That's a powerful tool, especially for managing life in a high-stakes, often brutal society like Rome.
Incredibly powerful. And Epictetus connects this directly back to his dichotomy of control. He argues that achieving emotional health, achieving ataraxia or tranquility, requires rigorously limiting our desires and aversions only to the domain of volition.
Only wanting what's truly up to us.
Only wanting what's truly up to us. Our judgments, our intentions, our actions, and only being averse to what's truly bad for our character vice, irrationality. If you desire external things, wealth, health, other people's approval, you are setting yourself up for guaranteed frustration and disappointment because those things aren't fully in your control.
And mastering this managing judgments and desires is like the first step.
Epictetus calls it the first and most necessary field of study. Get this right. And it's the prerequisite for making any further philosophical progress. It builds that stable internal foundation.
And it's this internal stability, presumably, that allows someone to then fulfill their social roles properly.
Exactly. Which brings us to the concepts of oikeiosis.
Oikeiosis. Okay, that sounds technical.
It is a bit technical, but it's vital. It's often translated as appropriation or affinity. It describes this idea of a natural, sort of expansive orientation that humans have towards others.
Like concentric circle.
That's the classic image, often attributed to Heracles. It starts with self-love, a natural concern for oneself. But then it naturally expands outward.
To family.
To immediate family, yes. Then to friends, neighbors, fellow citizens, your local community, your nation, and ultimately to all of humanity, recognizing our shared rationality. We see this in Cicero's writings, drawing on Chrysippus and Cato.
Okay, but why is that structure, self, family, community, humanity, so important for understanding the gender roles in Stoicism?
As remember, Musonius Rufus's core argument for educating women.
Yeah.
He specifically said women should practice virtue precisely because they had crucial social roles they were naturally inclined toward, particularly the devotion of parents to their children. That devotion is seen as a primary, foundational expression of oikiosis.
Ah, so virtue enables them to perform these natural roles well.
Exactly. The quality of your performance in any social role, parent, child, spouse, citizen, is determined entirely by your virtue, by your character.
And Epictetus takes this idea and really formalizes it, doesn't he? He doesn't just talk about roles as duties, but as part of who you are.
He does. He frames our social roles, whether you're a friend, a son, a father, or for a woman, a wife, a mother, a daughter, not just as external jobs you passively inherit.
Yeah.
They become components of your personal identity, and acting within them falls squarely within the realm of volition, of choice.
So your goal isn't just to be a wife ticking boxes.
No, your goal is to be a dutiful, philosophical, and scrupulous person, first and foremost, because that internal state is the necessary condition for acting well, acting virtuously, in every social role that nature or circumstance assigns to you.
So if a woman's role required her to be, say, a dutiful daughter caring for aging parents or a resilient manager of a complex household, maybe during wartime or exile like we hear about with the Aureus, her ability to actually do those roles successfully, virtuously, is based entirely on her internal philosophical state, her character, not on her external resources or even physical strength.
Precisely. The philosophy provides the method for fulfilling the duty properly. It gives you the resilience, the judgment, the temperance needed.
Okay, and finally, one last area that really shows the universal application, regardless of gender, is how Stoicism deals with grief, with loss. Because loss hits everyone.
It does. And this is an area where Stoicism sometimes gets a bad rap, seen as overly harsh or suppressive.
Right, the stereotype of the unfeeling Stoic.
Exactly. And some early Greek Stoics perhaps did hold a very hard line, suggesting a true sage would feel no grief at all upon losing a loved one. But Seneca, writing in the Roman context, strongly rejected that view. He actually called it inhuman.
Inhuman, that's strong language.
It is. Seneca refused to sort of eject the sage from the human race. He said he wouldn't deny the wise person a sense of pain as if he were some kind of rock with no feelings at all.
So feeling sadness is natural.
He concluded that, look, tears are going to fall sometimes no matter how hard we try to hold them back. And actually, shedding them can relieve the mind. It's a natural process.
So Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotion entirely.
It's not about suppression, but about rational management. It's about recognizing the initial natural emotional response, the shock, the sadness, but not giving assent to irrational judgments that might follow, like, my life is over, or I cannot possibly go on. You feel the pain, but you don't let it destroy your rational capacity.
And that balanced recognition, acknowledging the natural human vulnerability, the pain of loss, but maintaining rational composure that applies equally to everyone, right? Men, women, rich, poor.
Absolutely equally. It applies to the shared human burden of facing adversity and loss. It confirms, yet again, that Stoic resilience is built on inner character, on understanding what's truly good and bad, not on denying our fundamental humanity.
So let's try and wrap this up. What does this all mean for us looking back at these sources? Our search started maybe thinking about specific famous Roman women known for their courage.
Boeotia, the Arias, Phania.
Right. But it feels like we ended up somewhere else, somewhere more fundamental. We found this incredibly powerful, universal mandate, articulated most clearly by Musonius Rufus.
Yeah, the idea that virtue, living well, is a purely human project. It's accessible to all rational beings, and actually, it's demanded of all who seek a truly good, flourishing life.
Musonius just laid it out so logically. Denying philosophical education to women makes absolutely no sense if you also expect women to be just, temperate, and courageous.
Exactly. And his brilliant move, really, was defining philosophy itself as simply the practice of noble behavior.
That just cuts through everything.
It strips away all the barriers, wealth, social class, academic credentials, and crucially for our discussion, gender. All that's left is the individual's responsibility to live well, to cultivate their character, to master that inner citadel.
And this philosophy, the whole point of which, as Epictetus says, is to make you unimpeded and undistressed. It's fiercely independent of external circumstances. It doesn't matter if you're dealing with the tyranny of an emperor or political exile or just the everyday pressures of a difficult life. Your real freedom is guaranteed only by that internal autonomy.
An autonomy secured by the practice of philosophy, the art of living.
Right.
And that, I think, leads us directly to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over.
Okay, let's hear it.
If philosophy at its core is defined simply as the practice of noble behavior,
As Musonius argued.
and if this practice is required of all men and all women equally to achieve a good life, then what structures, what assumptions, maybe ancient, maybe modern, still mistakenly suggest that living a noble life requires some specific external marker?
Like wealth or power or a certain job title or social position.
Exactly. Instead of recognizing that it simply requires a commitment to inner character, to virtue. Just remember Epictetus's sharp observation. True freedom, true nobility, is never found in becoming a consul or marrying royalty. It's found only in mastering the art of life itself. Something for you to think about.